The battle over Halion 9 was not a clash of fleets. It was the death cry of a civilization. The human armada had assembled every vessel that could still fight. Warships scarred from a dozen campaigns drifted in loose formation, engines burning hot to hold their lines. Old destroyers patched with scrap metal, civilian transports retrofitted with rail guns, and the Vanguard, the last true dreadnought of Earth's navy, stood as a thin shield before the world below. The enemy did not hesitate. The Velkari had arrived like predators circling prey. Their fleet stretched across the stars, ships shaped like blackened bones wrapped in living armor. They didn't broadcast warnings, they didn't offer demands. They simply opened fire. The first volley shattered humanity's formation. Blue-white plasma cut through shields like they were made of paper, reducing 2 frigates to clouds of molten debris. A third ship, Lancer's Hope, tried to ram an enemy cruiser, but it never got close. Velkari cannons gutted it mid-charge, scattering its crew into the vacuum. On the Vanguard's bridge, Captain Adrian Cole braced himself against the shockwaves rattling through the hull. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and burnt circuitry. Screens blinked with red warnings, and each second more human vessels winked out of existence. "Shields collapsing!" the tactical officer shouted over the chaos. Sparks leapt from her console, showering the floor with fire. Adrian's gaze flicked to the tactical display. Humanity's proud fleet had been reduced to desperate dots blinking weakly against a sea of enemy warforms. Each fallen ship was another nail in Earth's coffin. He clenched his jaw. If we fail here, Earth is next, and yet he could not let despair take root. The crew still looked to him for orders. Then there was her, the Sentinel. She was a figure no one truly understood. Wrapped in black armor, reinforced with strange alloys no engineer could identify, she carried herself with the silence of a predator. Her silver mask reflected the chaos of the bridge, hiding her eyes, her face, her humanity, if she was human at all. She had appeared months ago in another battle that should have ended in extinction. A nameless figure who tore through alien warbands with unnatural speed and skill. Since then, she had fought beside humanity without question, but never with explanation. She spoke little. She answered less. Yet her presence inspired soldiers who had lost faith in victory. Now she stood at the viewport, her blade still wet with alien ichor from boarding actions earlier that day. She did not flinch at the carnage outside. She watched the battlefield as if she had always known this moment would come. Adrian moved to her side. "If we break here," he said, voice low but fierce, "we lose everything." For a long moment, the Sentinel said nothing. Her mask tilted slightly toward him, and though he could not see her eyes, he felt the weight of her attention. Then her voice came, calm, quiet, but carrying the sharpness of steel. "Then we do not break." Those words hit him harder than any battle order. They were not a suggestion, not a plea. They were a command, spoken as if she had already seen the outcome and chosen it for them. Around them, the bridge crew struggled to hold their positions. Some looked up at the masked warrior. Despite exhaustion, fear, and despair, their shoulders squared again. If she believed they would not break, then perhaps they wouldn't. Adrian gave the order. "All batteries, fire at will! Every last cannon, every torpedo! Make them bleed for every inch!" The Vanguard roared. Its cannons spat fury, hurling tungsten slugs and bursts of plasma into the alien swarm. One Velkari cruiser erupted in a chain of explosions, its organic hull cracking apart. Another faltered under concentrated fire, spiraling downward into Halion 9's atmosphere. It wasn't victory. Not yet. But it was defiance, sharp and unyielding. Outside, the sky burned with falling ships, both human and alien. Inside, hope flickered where only despair had been moments before, and at the heart of it all stood the Sentinel. Silent and unwavering, her presence a reminder that even at the edge of annihilation, humanity had not yet bowed. The war was far from over. The enemy was stronger, faster, more numerous, but something in that masked warrior's voice, in the way she said "we do not break," set a fire in Adrian's chest that no alien weapon could extinguish. The final battle for humanity's survival had begun. The invasion of Halion 9 became a storm of fire. What began as orbital strikes turned into an avalanche of destruction as Velkari drop pods punched through the atmosphere like flaming meteors. Each pod hit the ground with the force of a bomb, splitting open to disgorge armored warriors and biomachines bred for slaughter. Within hours, entire cities were burning. Adrian Cole, no longer sheltered on the bridge of the Vanguard, led a defense force in the ruins of Calith Prime, once a proud metropolis, now a graveyard of broken towers. The air was choked with smoke and ash. Streets were rivers of molten metal. Civilians ran where they could, but most were already trapped under rubble or captured for horrors unspeakable. Adrian's rifle vibrated in his hands as he fired burst after burst into oncoming Velkari infantry. The creatures were nightmares, 8 feet tall, armored hides like obsidian, faces stretched into snarling maws full of fangs. Their guttural war cries shook the air as they charged. "Left flank collapsing," shouted Lieutenant Braddock, his voice nearly drowned by the crack of rifles and the thunder of alien cannons. Adrian swung his weapon, mowing down 2 of the beasts before one vaulted a ruined wall, landing within striking distance. Its claws slashed toward him, but a flash of silver intercepted it. The Sentinel! She moved with inhuman precision, her blade cutting in wide arcs that left trails of glowing ichor splattering the ground. The beast collapsed, its armored chest split open. Without pause, she hurled a plasma grenade into a cluster of advancing enemies. The explosion painted the night in green fire, ripping through their ranks. For the soldiers watching, it was more than just another kill. It was proof that the impossible enemy could bleed. Men who had been seconds from breaking steadied their weapons, firing with new resolve. The battle turned into a desperate push and pull. For every Velkari brute they dropped, more poured in. The enemy fought with savage coordination, their guttural commands carrying through the ruins. Human barricades buckled, rebuilt, then buckled again, and then the ground itself began to quake. From the shattered streets rose a new terror, Velkari war beasts. They were monstrosities bred for siege, towering 30 feet tall, with clawed limbs thick as tanks and hides studded with glowing veins of energy. Their jaws dripped molten plasma, and when they roared, buildings shook apart. One of them plowed through a line of armored transports, tossing them aside like toys. Another stomped into a fortified block, crushing defenders beneath its claws. Panic rippled through the human line. Even tanks couldn't stop them. Rockets left black scars but barely slowed their advance. Adrian bared his teeth. "Target those things with everything we've got!" But his voice was nearly lost under the beast's roar as it turned its glowing maw toward them. A blast of plasma erupted, vaporizing half a squad in an instant. Adrian dove behind cover, ears ringing, the world on fire. He raised his rifle but knew it was useless. That's when the Sentinel leapt. She sprinted across rubble, bounding up collapsed beams, climbing higher as the war beast tore at her with claws. She was a streak of black and silver, moving faster than the eye could track. Soldiers below stopped firing just to watch. With a final leap, she landed on the creature's skull. Her blade plunged deep, cutting through armor and bone. The monster shrieked, thrashing violently, but she clung to it with terrifying resolve. Sparks and ichor burst in showers as she drove the weapon deeper until the beast finally toppled sideways, crashing to the ground in a quake of dust and flame. A cheer erupted from the human line. For a heartbeat, the impossible seemed possible again. Adrian seized the moment. "Forward! Push them back!" The soldiers surged, driven by rage and awe. Rifles barked, grenades flashed, and the Velkari advance slowed under the renewed fury. Yet Adrian knew the truth, even as he fired until his rifle overheated. For every beast slain, 10 more prowled beyond the horizon. For every wave of warriors broken, another tide prepared to fall. Humanity was holding on by the edge of a knife, and at the center of it, the Sentinel kept fighting, a lone figure against the tide. Her mask glinting in the inferno, her blade a beacon in the smoke. She was their storm. She was their hope. But Adrian could see it in her movements. The battles were only growing worse. The Velkari were not throwing everything at them yet. This was only the beginning of the fall, and humanity was bleeding faster than it could stand. The war dragged on. Halyon 9 was no longer a world. It was a scar. Entire districts burned ceaselessly, fed by alien fuel. The skies were filled with drifting wreckage, charred bodies, and the crack of plasma fire. The Vanguard, limping in orbit, was held together by patches of steel and desperation, but it still fired on any Velkari ship that dared approach. On the ground, survival replaced strategy. Adrian Cole commanded what remained of the 9th Battalion, a few hundred men scattered across ruins. They built barricades from crushed vehicles, turned subway tunnels into bunkers, and used the city's shattered towers as sniper nests. The Sentinel was always at the center of the fiercest fighting, carving paths where none should exist. But war was never just about weapons. It was about will. And Adrian noticed something strange. Wherever the Sentinel walked, fear receded. Veterans who had lost families, rookies who had never faced real combat, even the broken and half-starved civilians, they all found strength when she appeared. Her mask gleamed through smoke. Her blade hummed as it struck, and her mere presence steadied the trembling hands of men ready to surrender. The rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered she was an ancient AI rebuilt by human engineers. Others swore she was the ghost of humanity's first martyr, returned to protect her people. A few even believed she was Velkari herself, a traitor turned against her own. Adrian had no answers. He only knew that without her, they would already be ash. One night, after 12 hours of non-stop fighting, Adrian staggered through a ruined square where fires burned in broken fountains. He found her standing alone, motionless amid the carnage, her silver mask turned upward toward the sky. The faint glow of orbiting warships reflected in her armor. "You don't rest," Adrian said hoarsely, setting his rifle down against rubble. His voice cracked with exhaustion. Her head turned slowly toward him. "The mask revealed nothing, do you?" she asked. He almost laughed, but there was no humor left in him. "I rest when the dead stop outnumbering the living." She didn't reply. He stepped closer, the flames casting their faces in shifting light. He realized how close they stood, only a few feet away. "You fight like no human I've ever seen," Adrian admitted. "Your speed, your strength, the way you know their tactics before they use them, it's not natural." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. For a heartbeat, Adrian wondered if he had finally overstepped, if this was the moment she would turn her blade on him for prying too deep. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was softer than the steel it usually carried. "Would it change how you see me?" Adrian frowned. "Depends on the answer." She tilted her head slightly as if weighing his worth, as if deciding whether to peel away a truth too dangerous to be shared. Then her shoulders lowered. "The Velkari took everything from me," she said, words quiet but sharp. "My home, my people, my blood, what I was no longer matters, only what I do." It wasn't the explanation he sought, but the weight behind her words silenced his doubts. Before he could press further, distant thunder rolled through the city. The Velkari were on the move again. The Sentinel turned away, blade humming to life. "Another day, Captain," she said. And then she was gone, vanishing into the smoke. Her silhouette swallowed by the burning night, Adrian stood alone, the words still echoing in his head. What I was no longer matters. That night, he realized something. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival, it was fighting for meaning. For the belief that what they had been, what they had lost, was not all they were. The Sentinel embodied that truth. She was more than a weapon. She was proof that even when the galaxy tried to erase you, you could carve yourself into legend. But legends carried shadows. As Adrian prepared for the next assault, he couldn't shake the thought that the Sentinel's story was not simply tragic, it was dangerous. Whatever her true origin, it was tied to the enemy. He could feel it in his bones, and if that truth came to light, it might either save humanity or doom it faster than any Velkari warship. The storm finally broke. After weeks of grinding warfare, the Velkari stopped sending endless waves of infantry and beasts. Instead, the sky itself darkened as their flagship descended through the atmosphere. It was a leviathan of living metal, miles long, bristling with spines that pulsed with alien energy. Its shadow fell across the ruins of Halion 9 like an eclipse, drowning the battlefield in gloom. At its heart was High Lord Kerr, the warlord who had burned a dozen civilizations into dust. He was no distant commander. He came to end things personally. To the Velkhari, his presence was a promise of total annihilation. To humanity, it was a death sentence. Adrian Cole knew there was only one chance left. Kill Kerr, and maybe, just maybe, the swarm would falter. The soldiers still alive knew it too. They gathered in the ruins for a final strike. A desperate march toward the alien command fortress that had sprouted like a tumor from Calith Prime's wreckage. The march was madness. Every block was a battlefield. Streets were rivers of shattered glass, craters filled with fire. The Velkhari threw everything into stopping them. Columns of armored brutes, hails of plasma, swarms of airborne hunters that screamed through the skies. Human soldiers fell by the dozens. Adrian refused to look back. If he did, he would see the faces of those he had led into certain death. He only looked forward, to the towering fortress at the city's core, its walls alive with pulsing veins of alien energy. It looked less like a structure and more like a living wound, a grotesque cathedral built of bone and steel. The sentinel carved the way. She didn't hesitate, didn't falter. Her blade cut down Velkhari champions in single strokes. She scaled walls, dismembered gun nests, and destroyed war beasts that would have shredded entire squads. The soldiers followed, clinging to her momentum like men caught in the wake of a storm. Finally, after hours of blood and fire, they breached the fortress gates. The interior was worse. The walls were wet, breathing, dripping with black ichor. Lights pulsed like beating hearts, casting the chamber in a sickly crimson glow. The stench was overwhelming, a mix of rot and ozone that made men gag through their helmets. At the far end, seated on a throne of fused bone, rose Kerr. He was a giant even among his kind, 3 meters tall, clad in armor that seemed grown into his flesh. His fanged jaw split into a grin as he rose, claws scraping sparks against the floor. "So these are the last of mankind," he rumbled, voice shaking the walls. "And their masked pretender." How amusing. The air grew heavy. Fear pressed down like gravity. Soldiers who had survived weeks of hell now trembled at the sight of him. Adrian forced himself forward, rifle aimed. "We didn't come for amusement. We came to end you." Kerr laughed, a sound like cracking stone. "Then bleed for me." The chamber exploded into chaos. The last of Adrian's soldiers fired everything they had. Rockets slammed into Kerr's chest. Rifles burned white-hot. Grenades burst with concussive force. The warlord shrugged it all off, striding forward through smoke and fire. His claws tore men apart with casual sweeps, bodies flung into walls like broken dolls. The sentinel met him head-on. Their clash was a blur of light and shadow, her blade against his claws, sparks bursting with every strike. She moved with impossible speed, slashing and dodging. While Kerr struck with brutal force that shook the ground, Adrian tried to join, emptying magazines into the monster's hide. But Kerr knocked him aside with a backhand that shattered his chest plate and sent him skidding across the floor. He struggled to rise, vision swimming. Through the haze, he saw them. Kerr towering over the sentinel, each strike heavier, each parry slower. She was holding, but barely. Her mask gleamed in the bloody light, hiding the strain in her eyes. Then came the moment. Kerr fainted low, then drove his clawed hand straight through her chest. The sound was sickening, armor cracking, flesh tearing. Her blade clattered to the ground as blood spilled across the floor. "No!" Adrian's voice tore from his throat as he stumbled forward. He caught her before she fell, her weight heavy in his arms. The soldiers who remained froze, their last hope bleeding out before their eyes. Kerr loomed above them, chest heaving with savage triumph. "Your storm ends here, little humans," he growled. "Your fire dies with her." Adrian held her close, his heart hammering, his mind screaming. The sentinel, the warrior who had carried humanity through the fire, was dying in his arms. And in that moment, as her masked face turned toward him, the battle shifted. Not in guns, not in claws, but in the whisper of a truth long hidden. The chamber was chaos, fires licking along the alien walls, soldiers moaning in pain, weapons scattered across the floor. Yet to Adrian Cole, the world narrowed to the woman in his arms. The sentinel, the masked warrior who had fought like a living legend, was bleeding out, her breaths ragged, each one shallower than the last. Her armor, so many times unbroken, was split wide by Kerr's claw. Crimson stained his hands as he pressed against the wound, desperate, furious. "You can't die now," Adrian muttered, his voice hoarse. "Not after everything. Not here." Her head shifted slightly, the silver mask reflecting the sickly glow of the fortress. Even broken, she carried a presence that commanded silence. Her gloved hand, shaking, lifted to his shoulder. "Adrian." Her voice was weaker than he had ever heard, stripped of its iron edge. "Listen to me." He leaned closer, fighting to keep his focus on her words while Kerr prowled behind, savoring his victory. "Remove my mask," she whispered, each syllable a struggle. "And you'll finally know who I really am." For a moment, Adrian froze. The mask had always been untouchable, the mystery no one dared to breach. Now she was asking him to strip it away. His fingers trembled as they brushed the clasps. He hesitated because he feared what he would see. The mask clicked free. He pulled it away, and his world shattered. Beneath it was not the face of a stranger, nor an alien construct, but a human woman. Scarred, yes, weathered by pain, but unmistakably human. Her eyes, dulled with exhaustion, still glimmered with the same fierce spark he remembered. "Elena." His voice broke. The name felt foreign on his tongue, a ghost resurrected. "It's you," his sister. His blood. Years ago, Elena Cole had been lost in the first Velkari invasion. Reports said she was killed in a transport strike. He had mourned her, buried her memory, and carried the guilt of not protecting her ever since. Yet here she was, alive, or something close to it. Tears stung his eyes as he gripped her tighter. "They said you were dead. I was taken." Her words faltered, as if dredged from the bottom of a nightmare. "They broke me, Adrian, tried to shape me into their weapon. But I fought back. I escaped. I couldn't go back as myself. Not then, so I became her, the sentinel. The faceless warrior who had saved them again and again. It had been Elena all along." Adrian's mind reeled. Every battle, every impossible feat, every moment of inspiration she had given humanity. It hadn't been a stranger. It had been his sister, carrying the weight of two lives, the one she lost and the one she created to keep fighting. "You came back to us," he whispered. Her lips curved faintly, though blood stained them. "I came back for you, for all of us." Behind them, Kerr snarled, regaining his balance, readying for the killing blow. But Adrian didn't hear him. He only saw Elena's dimming eyes, the truth unraveling in their final moments together. "You're going to live," Adrian said fiercely. "We'll get you out. We'll fix this." She tightened her grip on his arm, cutting him off. Her strength was fading, but her will was unbreakable. "No, my fight is done." "Don't you dare say that. You have to finish it, Adrian." Her eyes locked on his, steady despite the pain. "You must kill him, end it. For all of us." The weight of her plea crushed him. She wasn't asking as a warrior. She was asking as his sister, the girl he'd grown up with, the one who had once dreamed of the stars. And now she was entrusting him with the fate of humanity. Adrian's throat burned with rage and grief. He wanted to argue, to beg, to deny it all. But there was no time. Kerr's shadow fell over them, claws dripping, laughter rumbling like thunder. "A touching reveal," the warlord mocked. "But all your secrets die here, little humans." Adrian laid Elena gently against the floor, his heart breaking. He picked up her fallen blade, the weapon that had carved through armies. It felt heavy, alive, thrumming with a power he didn't understand. Her voice, faint now, carried one last command. Make them remember who we are. Her eyes fluttered shut. Adrian rose, blade in hand, fire in his veins. His sister's blood still warmed his skin. His grief twisted into fury, into purpose. Kerr loomed above, confident, unchallenged, but Adrian wasn't afraid anymore. This wasn't just a battle. It was the last stand of humanity, and with Elena's truth burning in his chest, Adrian was ready to finish what she had begun. The fortress groaned, as if it knew the end was near. Flames ate through alien walls, smoke coiled like serpents, sparks rained from shattered conduits. Adrian Cole stood at the center, Elena's lifeless body behind him, her mask discarded like the false history it carried. Before him loomed Kerr. The Valkyrie warlord's hulking frame towered like a living mountain, his obsidian claws glowing faint with stolen energy. His laughter rolled across the chamber, deep and cruel. You, a mortal without the mask? Kerr sneered.
You think you can face me?
She could barely hold me off, and she was their greatest weapon. Adrian's grip tightened on Elena's blade. It hummed against his palm, a vibration alive with fury and memory. He raised it, pointing directly at the warlord. His voice was steel. I don't need to be her. I'm enough. Kerr charged first, claws slashing, each swing tearing gouges into the floor. Adrian ducked low, rolled, and struck upward, sparks flying as blade met claw. The impact rattled his bones but drove him forward. He wasn't her equal in skill, he knew that, but rage and resolve lent his strikes a brutal edge. Kerr swiped again, faster this time, but Adrian caught the claw with the flat of the blade, twisting hard. The warlord staggered, surprised by the human's sudden ferocity. Adrian pressed, slashing again and again, sparks flaring like tiny suns. You killed my sister! Adrian roared. And every soul before her. That ends now! The alien laughed, even as blood welled from shallow cuts across his armored hide. Your kind are insects, always buzzing, always resisting, but crushed all the same. Adrian lunged, blade angled high. Kerr blocked and slammed his massive fist into Adrian's chest. Pain exploded through his ribs, knocking him across the chamber. He slid, coughing blood, but still forced himself upright. His vision blurred, his body screaming to stop. He remembered Elena's words. Make them remember who we are, not just her fight. Humanities, Adrian charged back, reckless but unyielding. Their clash rang like thunder, blade against claw, steel against alien bone. Each strike echoed the fury of an entire species unwilling to kneel. Kerr snarled, beginning to tire of this insolence. He slammed the floor with his claws, sending shockwaves across the chamber. Adrian was thrown down, but even sprawled on the ground, he refused to release the blade. He dragged himself to his knees, spit blood, and rose again. You don't quit, do you? Kerr growled, a hint of unease edging into his tone. Adrian grinned through broken teeth. That's humanity's trick. We don't stop until one of us isn't breathing. With a roar, he hurled himself forward. He ducked under a swipe, rolled between Kerr's legs, and slashed deep into the alien's hamstring. Kerr bellowed, collapsing to one knee. Adrian climbed onto his back like a desperate predator, stabbing again and again into the armored flesh. Black blood sprayed, burning his hands, but he didn't let go. Kerr flung him off, slamming him into a wall. Adrian gasped, ribs snapping, but his hand still clutched the blade. The warlord lumbered toward him, limping now, rage boiling in his monstrous eyes. You cannot win! You are only a man! Adrian forced himself up, shaking, drenched in blood. His lips curled into a grim smile. Exactly. And that's why you've already lost. With a final surge, he drove forward, dodging one last swipe. He leapt, every muscle screaming, every memory of Elena burning in his chest, and plunged the blade straight into Kerr's heart. The warlord froze. His claws clawed at the wound, but the blade pulsed with a resonance that tore through him. He let out a guttural roar that shook the fortress to its core, then collapsed, his body convulsing before finally going still. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of flames. Adrian staggered, barely holding himself upright. The blade, drenched in alien blood, hummed softly, as though recognizing its task was complete. He dropped to his knees beside Elena, the fight finally draining out of him. Around the chamber, surviving soldiers, human and alien rebels alike, stared in awe. They had seen the impossible, a single human defeating the nightmare that had ruled their skies. Adrian cradled Elena one last time, whispering through tears. "We did it. Lena, they'll remember." Beyond the fortress walls, the fleets above shifted. The Valkyrie, suddenly leaderless, faltered. Humanity's ships surged forward, pressing the advantage. Victory spread like wildfire. Inside the burning chamber, Adrian lay beside his sister, bloodied but unbowed, knowing the galaxy had just witnessed the truth. Humanity did not break. Humanity endured. And when history told the tale, they would speak of the mask, the sacrifice, and the brother who rose to finish what his sister began.